Reading from Nectar of Devotion, summary study of Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and is presented by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And we're reading from the copyright 1970 edition, ISKCON Press. It's the first edition, and it is available for free download from the website krishnapath.org. This is Chapter 28, Other Ecstatic Symptoms. Existential ecstatic love for Krishna. When a devotee is always intensely affected by love for Krishna in a direct relationship with him, or even a little apart from him, his status is called existential ecstatic love. The symptoms originating from such existential ecstatic love are divided into three headings, namely, moist, burnt, and dried up. Moist existential ecstatic love, aroused in connection with Krishna, is divided into two, direct and indirect. Radharani was weaving a garland of kunda flowers, and upon hearing the vibration of Krishna's flute, she immediately stopped her work. This is an example of direct, moistened, existential ecstatic love. Indirect, moistened, existential ecstatic love is described in the following statement. Krishna, who is also called Purushottama, is to the eyes of Mother Yasoda just like the cloud is to the eyes of the Chataki bird. When Krishna had been brought to Mathura, Mother Yasoda, being very anxious and angry, began to rebuke the king of Mathura. Burnt existential ecstatic love is divided into three. One example is as follows. One day, Mother Yasoda was dreaming that the gigantic demon Putana was lying in the courtyard of her house. She immediately became anxious to seek out Krishna. When there are manifestations of ecstatic symptoms in the body of a non-devotee, these are called dried-up symptoms of ecstatic love. The non-devotees are actually materialistic, but in contact with some pure devotee, they sometimes may manifest some symptoms of ecstasy. Devotional scholars call these dried-up symptoms. There are 8 symptoms of existential ecstatic love: becoming stunned, perspiring, standing of hairs on the body, faltering of the voice, trembling of the body, changing bodily colors, shedding tears, and devastation. The scientific explanation of these 8 symptoms is given by Rupa Goswami as follows. When the vital force of life is in contact with the earth, it's called stunning. When the same force comes into contact with water, there's shedding of tears. When the same force comes into contact with fire, there's perspiration. When the same force comes into contact with the sky, there's complete devastation. And when that force comes into contact with the air, there is trembling, failing of the voice, and standing of hairs on the body. These symptoms are sometimes manifested internally and sometimes externally. The pure devotee always feels such symptomatic expressions within himself, but being afraid of outsiders, he does not generally manifest them externally. Becoming stunned. The symptom of becoming stunned is caused by ecstatic tribulation, fearfulness, astonishment, lamentation, and anger. This symptom is exhibited by a stoppage of talking, a stoppage of movement, a feeling of voidness, an extreme feeling of separation. When Uddhava was describing Krishna's pastimes to Vidura, he said, quote, "One day the gopis became stunned when Krishna, in the dress of a gardening maid, entered the greenhouse and enlivened them with joking and laughter. Then, when Krishna left the greenhouse, the gopis were seeing Krishna so ecstatically that it was as though both their minds and eyes were following him." End quote. These symptoms signify that, although the gopis' business was not finished, they had become stunned with ecstatic love. Another example of being stunned took place when Krishna was surrounded by various wrestlers in the sacrificial arena of Kamsa. His mother Devaki then became stunned, and her eyes dried up when she saw Krishna amongst the wrestlers. And there is a footnote here. Devaki was the natural mother of Krishna, his father being Vasudeva. In order to protect the divine baby from Devaki's brother Kamsa, Vasudeva delivered Krishna to Nanda and Mother Yasoda in Vrindavan, and it was there that he exhibited his childhood pastimes. At 16 years of age, he returned to Mathura, where Devaki had given birth to him, and vanquished Kamsa in the arena mentioned here. See the author's Krsna, the book Krsna, as well as his Srimad Bhagavatam for further details of these events. Continuing with the text. There's also an example of the astonishment of Lord Brahma. It is explained in the 10th canto, 13th chapter, 51st verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, that when Brahma understood that this cowherd boy was the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, he became stunned. All of his sensual activities became stopped upon seeing all the cowherd boys again, along with Krishna. Lord Brahma was so stunned that he appeared to be a golden statue with 4 heads. Also, when the residents of Braj found that Krishna had lifted Govardhan Hill with his left hand, they became stunned. Astonishment caused by lamentation is exemplified when Krishna was entering into the belly of the Bakashura demon, and all the demigods from higher planets became stunned with lamentation. A similar example of being stunned was visible in Arjuna, when he saw that Asvatthama was attempting to release his Brahmastra at Krishna. And there is a footnote here. The Brahmastra was a nuclear weapon controlled by mantra, or sound vibration. End of the footnote. Perspiration. An example of perspiring because of jubilation is described in Srimad Bhagavatam. One gopi addressed Radharani thusly, quote, "My dear Radharani, you are rebuking the sunshine unnecessarily, but I can understand you are perspiring only because of your becoming too lusty at seeing Krishna." End quote. Perspiration caused by fearfulness was exhibited by Raktak, one of the servants of Krishna. One day, Krishna dressed himself just like Abhimanyu, the husband of Radharani. Abhimanyu did not like Radharani's association with Krishna, and therefore when Raktak saw Krishna in the dress of Abhimanyu and thus mistook his identity, he began to strongly rebuke him. As soon as Raktak finally understood that it was Krishna in the dress of Abhimanyu, he began perspiring. This perspiration was caused by fearfulness. Perspiration due to anger was exhibited by Garuda, the eagle who is the carrier of Vishnu. Once, the heavenly king Indra was sending torrents of rain over Vrindavan. Garuda was observing the incident from above the clouds. Because of his anger, he began perspiring. Standing of hairs on the body. The standing up of hairs on the body was manifested when Mother Yasoda found within Krishna's mouth all the universal planetary systems. She had asked Krishna to open his mouth wide just to see whether he had eaten dirt. But when Krishna opened his mouth, she saw not only the entire earth, but also many other planets within his mouth. This caused a standing up of the hair on her body. Standing up of hair on the body resulting from jubilation is described in the 10th canto, 30th chapter, 9th verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, in connection with the gopis engaged in the rasa dance. During this rasa dance, Krishna disappeared all of a sudden with Radharani. The gopis began to search him out. At that time they addressed the earth and began to say, quote, "My dear earthly planet, how many austerities and penances you must have undergone to have the lotus feet of Krishna always touching your surface. I think that you must be very jubilant because the trees and plants, which are just like hairs on your body, are standing up so gloriously. May we ask, when did you first get these symptoms? Are you enjoying this jubilation since you were touched by the incarnation of Vamana, or since you were delivered by the incarnation of Varaha?" End quote. Krishna would sometimes perform mock fighting along with the cowherd boys. When Krishna blew his horn in this mock fighting, Sridham, who was on the opposing side, felt his bodily hairs stand up. Similarly, when Arjuna saw Krishna in his gigantic universal form, there was a standing of hairs on his body. Faltering of the voice. When Krishna was going to Mathura, on the chariot driven by Akrura, Yasoda and all the gopis came to try to forbid him to pass and to block his way. At that time Radharani was so perturbed that in a faltering voice she requested Mother Yasoda to please stop Akrura. Faltering of the voice resulting from wonder was exhibited by Brahma. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 13th chapter, 59th verse, that after bowing down before Lord Krishna, when Brahma began to rise, he prayed to the Lord in a faltering voice. In the 10th canto, 29th chapter, 27th verse, another example of faltering of the voice was exhibited by the gopis when they came to Krishna, desiring to dance with him. Krishna asked them to go back to their husbands and homes. The gopis apparently became very angry and began to talk to Krishna with faltering voices. In the 10th canto, 39th chapter, 48th verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, a faltering voice, due to jubilation, was exhibited by Akrura when he was shown all of the Vaikuntha planets resting within the river Yamuna. When Akrura understood that Krishna was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he bowed his head to Krishna's lotus feet and with folded hands began to pray in a faltering voice. There are also examples of faltering of the voice caused by fearfulness. One of Krishna's friends praised him thusly, quote, "My dear friend, your flute was given to your servant Patri, and when I asked him to return it, he began speaking in a faltering voice and his complexion became yellow." End of quote. Trembling. When Krishna was trying to capture the demon Shanka, Radharani began trembling out of fearfulness. Similar trembling of the body was exhibited in Sahadev, the younger brother of Nakula. When Shishupal was vehemently blaspheming the Lord, Sahadev began to tremble out of anger. Trembling of the body was also exhibited by Radharani out of tribulation. Radharani trembled as she told one of the gopis, quote, "Don't joke with this disappointing boy. Please ask him not to approach me, because he's always the cause of all grief for us." End quote. Changing of bodily color. Sometimes, due to great aggrievement caused by the dealings of Krishna, the body changes color. The gopis therefore addressed the Lord thusly, quote, "My dear Krishna, due to separation from you, all of the denizens of Vrindavan have changed their color. and because of this change of color, even the great sage Narada was thinking of Vrindavan as a white island in the ocean of milk." End quote. When Krishna and Balaram were present in the arena of Kamsa, Kamsa's body changed color. Similarly, Indra's face changed color when he saw that Krishna was protecting all the denizens of Braj by lifting Govardhan Hill. If the color change takes place due to excessive jubilation, the hue turns red. Because such change of color is so rare, Srila Rupa Goswami does not further discuss this point. Tears. Out of jubilation, anger, or separation, there may be the pouring down of tears from the eyes. When such tears are very cold, they're due to jubilation. And when they're due to anger, the tears become hot. In all cases, there is a severe movement of the eyes. The eyes generally become reddish. There's also an itching sensation which causes the sufferer to rub his eyes. When the lotus-eyed Rukmini, the first queen of Krishna in Dwarka, was shedding tears out of ecstatic jubilation, she did not like the tears. There's a passage in the Harivamsa wherein Satyabhama begins to shed tears because of her great affection for Krishna. An example of shedding tears because of anger was exhibited by Bhima when he saw that Shishupal was insulting Krishna in the Rajasuya arena of sacrifice. Bhima wanted to kill Shishupal immediately, but because Krishna did not order him to do so, he became morose with anger. It is described that there were hot tears covering his eyes, as a thin cloud sometimes covers the evening moon. In the evening, when the moon is slightly covered by a thin cloud, it looks very nice, and when Bhima was shedding tears on account of his anger, he also looked very nice. In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 68, verse 23, there's a nice example of Rukmini shedding tears of lamentation. When Krishna and Rukmini were talking, Rukmini became frightened of separation from Krishna, and therefore she began scratching the earth with her red lotus-like nails. Because she was shedding tears, the black ointment from her eyes was dripping, along with the tears, onto her breasts, which were covered with kumkum powder. Rukmini was so aggrieved that her voice was choked up. Devastation. When a person is confused by simultaneous happiness and tribulation and does not know what to do, this state of confusion is called pralaya, or devastation. In this condition of pralaya, one sometimes falls down on the ground, and all the symptoms of ecstatic love become manifest. When the gopis were searching after Krishna, and all of a sudden he came out from the bushes and creepers, all of them became stunned and almost senseless. In this state, the gopis appeared very beautiful. There's an example of pralaya, or devastation, in happiness. There are also instances of pralaya and distress. One such example is described in the 10th canto, 39th chapter, 14th verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Sukadeva Goswami tells King Parikshit, quote, "My dear king, when the gopis were missing Krishna, they were so much absorbed in meditation upon him that all of their senses stopped functioning, and they lost all bodily sense. It was as though they had become liberated from all material conditions." Out of the many ecstatic symptoms of the body, the symptom of being stunned is especially significant. According to the degree of being stunned, the vital force within the body becomes agitated, and due to such a state, the other ecstatic loving symptoms sometimes become altered. These transcendental ecstatic symptoms gradually develop, and in the course of such development they are sometimes called smoky, sometimes called blazing, and sometimes called shining. These 3 degrees are experienced for many, many years and extend to different parts of the body. Unlike the shedding of tears and faltering of the voice, the condition of being stunned is spread all over the body. The shedding of tears and faltering of voice are simply localized symptoms. The shedding of tears, however, sometimes makes the eyes become swollen and whitish, and sometimes the lenses of the eye become differently focused. Faltering of the voice may sometimes cause choking in the throat and extreme anxiety. As the different symptoms of these ecstatic manifestations are localized, they are accompanied by different local reactions. For example, when the throat is choked up because of a faltering voice, there may be a sound like "rrr." Such sounds choke up the voice, and with extreme mental anxiety they may manifest in different ways. All these symptoms are listed under the dried-up, existential condition known as smoky, and they're exhibited in different ways. Sometimes, while participating in ceremonies celebrating Krishna's pastimes, or in the society of devotees, there is dancing ecstasy. Such sentiments are called blazing. None of the above symptoms can be manifested without the basic principle of strong attachment for Krishna. In the smoky condition of such ecstatic expressions, the symptoms could otherwise be hidden. This type of symptom was experienced by priest Gargamuni, who was performing some ritualistic ceremony in the house of Nanda Maharaj. When he heard about Krishna's killing of the Aghasura demon, there were some tears visible in his eyes, his throat was trembling, and perspiration covered his whole body. In this way, priest Gargamuni's beautiful face assumed a nice condition. When several such ecstatic symptoms are visible, the condition is called blazing. For example, some of Krishna's friends told him, quote, "My dear friend, as soon as I heard the sound of your flute from within the forest, my hands became almost motionless, my eyes became full of tears, so much so, in fact, I could not recognize your peacock feather. My thighs became almost completely stunned, so I could not move even an inch. Therefore, my dear friend, I must acknowledge the wonderful vibration of your transcendental flute." End quote. Similarly, one gopi said to another, quote, "My dear friend, when I heard the sound of Krishna's flute, I tried to hide myself from the reaction of the vibrations, but still I could not check the trembling of my body, and therefore all of my friends in the house could detect my attachment for Krishna without any doubt." End quote. When the ecstatic symptoms cannot be checked, and they simultaneously appear in 4 or 5 different categories, this stage of ecstatic love is called shining. The example is cited in this connection that when the sage Narada saw Lord Krishna standing before him, his body became so stunned that he stopped playing on his veena. Because of his faltering voice, he could not offer any prayers to Krishna, and his eyes became filled with tears. Thus Narada's ability to see Krishna was also obstructed. When similar symptoms were manifest in the body of Srimati Radharani, some of her friends criticized her, quote, "My dear friend, you are blaming the flavor of the flowers for the tears in your eyes. You are rebuking the air for the standing of hairs on your body, and you are cursing your walking in the forest for your thighs being stunned. But your faltering voice reveals the cause to be different. It is just your attachment for Krishna." End quote. Srila Rupa Goswami remarks that when various symptoms become manifest very prominently, the devotee's condition can be called the brightest. For example, a friend of Krishna addressed him as follows, quote, "My dear Pitambar, because of separation from you, all the residents of Goloka Vrindavan are perspiring. They are lamenting with different words. Their eyes have become moistened with tears. Actually, all of them are in great confusion." End quote. There is a supreme symptom of ecstatic love which is called Mahabhav. This Mahabhav expression was possible only in Radharani, but later on when Sri Krishna Chaitanya appeared to feel the mode of love of Radharani, he also expressed all of the symptoms of Mahabhav. Sri Rupa Goswami says in this connection that when the symptoms of ecstatic love become the most bright, that stage is accepted as Mahabhav. Srila Rupa Goswami further analyzes the ecstatic loving expression into 4 divisions, which are called Satva Bas. Sometimes impersonalists who are not actually in devotional service may also exhibit such symptoms of ecstatic love, but this is not accepted as actual ecstasy. It's a reflection only. For example, sometimes in Varanasi, a holy city for impersonalist scholars, there may be seen a sannyasi crying from hearing the glories of the Lord. Impersonalists also sometimes chant the Hare Krishna mantra and dance, but their aim is not to serve the Lord. It is to become one with the Lord and merge into His existence. Rupa Goswami therefore says that even if the reactions to chanting are manifested in the impersonalist body, they should not be considered to be symptoms of actual attachment, but reflections only, just like the sun reflected in a dark room through some polished glass. The chanting of Hare Krishna, however, is so nice and transcendental that it will eventually melt even the hearts of persons who are impersonalists. Rupa Goswami says that the impersonalist symptoms are simply reflections of ecstatic love, not the real thing. Sometimes it is found that when staunch logicians, without any trace of devotional service and without actually understanding the transcendental glories of the Lord, sit down to hear the glories of the Lord, they appear to be melting and shedding tears. In this connection, there is a statement by a devotee who is addressing the Lord thusly, quote, "My dear Mukunda, I cannot properly express the glories of your pastimes. Even when the non-devotees hear of your glorious pastimes, they become affected and shed tears and start to tremble." End quote. Such non-devotees are not actually melted. They're hard-hearted. But the influence of the glories of the Lord is so great that even the non-devotees sometimes shed tears. Sometimes it is found that a non-devotee who has practically no taste for Krishna and who follows no rules or regulations can, by practice, make a show of devotional symptoms, even crying in an assembly of devotees. The shedding of tears is not actually an ecstatic loving expression, however. It's done simply by practice. Although there is no need to describe these reflections of ecstatic love, Rupa Goswami gives some instances where there is no actual devotional service, and such expressions are manifested.